We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends if you want to donate to this college football rebel outpost. Hit the $ where you make a comment, and I'll get you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls later in the show. Look, we're priming up for tomorrow's advisory meeting between the Big Ten and the SEC. And here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, we are able to give you a very late peek. A very late peek around the college football corner. A very late push from the Big Ten once again. And what we are, look, the information that we are providing you tonight, we are as confident about it as we were on September 9th of last year when we did the live show. You can go back and watch it, where I sat on here in front of this microphone and I said, the Big Ten is making this big push towards 4 automatic berths. That is what they want. They may have to settle for 3, but they want 4. And I went through all the reasons why they want 4. The number one reason is their media partners want it. That's what they want. The Big Ten is making another late push. There is this, and I put it in the description box. This is Cloak and Dagger at the very highest level. The only thing that I can compare it to, is when the Big Ten and the SEC with Notre Dame was in the room, when Big Ten and SEC were threatening to break away from the ACC and the Big 12. That they had to get what they wanted. They had to have the most chips. They needed governance power. They needed the distribution model to go their way. They needed everything, or they might just break away from everybody else. What's going on in New Orleans? Already what's going on in New Orleans. It isn't starting tomorrow. It's kind of finishing up tomorrow. The people are in the hotel rooms. We got some information. The Big Ten is doing another late push to get their media partners what they want, and that is certainty over the value of their conference football schedule year in and year out. And between the SEC and the Big Ten, let's make this perfectly clear. Either all the planes are going to land tomorrow, or none of them are going to land tomorrow. It's going to take all or nothing. It's all connected, ladies and gentlemen. It's all connected. It's all connected. First of all, you've got to figure out the college football playoff format. You've got to figure out, is there going to be automatic berths? How many automatic berths are there going to be? And then when you have that figured out, then you take the risk-benefit analysis of having a schedule between the Big Ten and the SEC. It's all connected. The SEC going in 9 conference games or not. It's all connected to the very first domino, and that is the college football playoff format. That has to get decided first, and depending on how that goes, the rest of the dominoes will follow. If the plane, now we're having a lot of issues with airplanes out there lately. Maybe I'm using the wrong metaphor, or maybe I am. Maybe I'm using the correct metaphor. But that first plane, the plane that is deciding, is there going to be a 4-4-2-2-1, 1 plus 1? I'm sorry. 4-4-2-2, 1 plus 1. Is that going to be it? Is that what we're deciding on between the Big Ten and the SEC? SEC, are you on board? Are you on board? Can you get on board? If that plane lands, then there's going to be a couple more planes landing right after that. If that plane doesn't land, none of these planes are landing between the Big Ten and the SEC. Not right now. And so what tonight is, we're going to go through it all here. We're going to go through it all. This is what you call a primer. This is what you call a primer heading into tomorrow in New Orleans. But to make sure that first plane lands, we have been told here at Peek Around the Corner that the Big Ten is willing, as that plane is in the air, as it's coming down, the Big Ten is willing, able, open to making the landing strip just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. Making sure the plane has a little bit more room to land, to stop at a stop, not belly over onto its belly. Make sure the icy landing strip doesn't cause it problems. Make the landing strip a little bit longer. The Big Ten, tonight, we've been told, is willing, able, and are open to the possibility of greasing the skids to make sure the 4-4-2-2-1+1 happens. By greasing the skids, by being open to enlarging the playoffs, jumping over the 14 number straight to the 16 number. That is how important the 4 automatic berths are for the Big Ten. They want it that bad. The SEC, they're a little bit more fractured on the issue. They've got a whole contention within the conference about half the conference doesn't even want to go to 9 conference games. And if they don't go to 9 conference games, it's way more difficult to do a schedule between the Big Ten and the SEC. It's way more difficult for them to agree upon anything. The Big Ten is willing to deal to make it more comfortable for the Big 12 and the ACC to get on board. We have been told, I would say about 2 hours ago, that the Big Ten is willing to deal. Willing to get, you know what, we're going to wait. We're going to go back into this. We're going to circle back. But there is something that we need to share with you, and I can share it directly off an email about some communication. And we're going to get to that in the back end of this monologue. We have been told here at Peek Around the Corner. Now remember, we told you about the initial push for the Big Ten to try to get 4 automatic berths, to have certainty in their regular season schedule, to have certainty over the importance of those conference games, because CBS, NBC, Fox, they have been wanting this. They want this to happen. They want playing games. They want it all. They want to squeeze out as much value out of that Big Ten schedule as possible. This is coming from the media partners. Now, why that is not being reported yet, I don't know why. I don't get it. But that is where the pressure is coming from. Fox wants it. CBS wants it. NBC wants it. And the Big Ten is working towards it. And the SEC is not as aligned as the Big Ten is on this. We are going to get to all of that. We are going to get to all. It's a late Big Ten push once again. But before we get into that, we're going to quickly go through just parts of the Heather Dinich ESPN article of early this morning on what we should be expecting coming out of that advisory meeting between the Big Ten and the SEC. I believe, from what I've been told, and this was about 2 hours ago, I believe, and this is not a shot against ESPN, this is not a shot against Heather Dinich, let me be clear. I think one part of that reporting is now, I would consider it obsolete. We're going to go through that. I believe that things have actually changed today. And before we get to the Heather Dinich article, I got something stuck in my craw. You know, there's something about having things so predetermined. It just rubs me the wrong way. You guys know this about me, right? You know that even though here at Peek Around the Corner, we've been reporting on this 442211 automatic birth stuff, you know how much I've been against it. You know I said it on our live show yesterday. What I report at Peek Around the Corner can be, often is, different from what I would like to have happen in college football. 95% of you understand the difference. This, now college football, some of its, I don't want to say reporters, I would, some of the college football content providers, like myself, are on this train where they are declaring that there is 0% chance of any Big 12 team winning the national title, where there is a 0% chance of any ACC school, not named Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, to win the national title. That there is a 0% chance that half of the SEC and 2/3 of the Big Ten, there's a 0% chance of any of them winning the national title. We are going to start off our show with that, and I want to talk about it, because I think it's a bunch of, as my father would say, and I said it last night, it's a bunch of baloney. How can you decree, sitting in your perch behind the microphone and decreeing that there is a 0% chance, not, you didn't say unlikely, and I'm talking about Bud Elliott, and I'm talking about a whole lot of people who followed up after him, agreeing with them. A lot of people that I like out there, Josh Pate, there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in Cinderella at all. Forget about the shoe. They don't believe in it at all. I completely disagree. 0% chance. It's never going to happen. Never is a very long time. Last year, did anybody predict that Indiana was going to make the playoffs? Did anybody truly predict that the Indiana Hoosiers were going to make the college football playoffs? Did anybody truly predict that the Arizona State Sun Devils were going to be an eyelash away of 4th and what was it? 4th and 13, 4th and 20, 4th and 18, whatever that play was. That they were an eyelash away from beating the Texas Longhorns in the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs. The Texas Longhorns that had one hell of a football team, that took the Buckeyes down to the wire. Arizona State took the Longhorns down to the wire. Did anybody seriously predict that to happen? We've had 1 year of the college football expanded playoffs. 1 year. Only one. As you can tell, I'm starting to get my voice back. And I think, thank God it's happening now, because I think I needed to get my voice back. 1 year of the expanded playoffs. 1 year. And we had the unexpected happening already. We're also in this new world of drastic change in college football. Drastic change. We're having this revenue share. We're having this $20.5 million. About 14, 15, 12, 13 million going to your football program. And then we're having collectives outside that are going to be giving more money to the football players. But we have this clearinghouse, and we don't know how effective this clearinghouse is going to be. We don't know how effective the enforcement are. We don't know zilch. We don't know what the future. We don't even know what's going to happen in April, for God's sake. We don't know what's going to happen in September. We don't know what the courts are going to do with Title IX. We don't know anything. We do know there are drastic changes going on. We do know that there are college football programs. I think we're getting into the cycle. Where college football programs, they're boosters. They belly up to the bar. They get this 1 year. They try to peak. And then after they peak, they settle back down a little bit and then they wait for another year and they come back up and they give all this investment to the college football program. Peak and valley. You don't know what these football programs are going to do, what they're going to be able to do on their peak years. There are so many examples of this. Let me give you an example. Let me give you just one example. The Texas Tech Red Raiders. I don't care. Look, would it be helpful if Texas Tech wins 10 games this year for people to believe in McGuire and the pro? Yes, of course. The people in Lubbock would tell you that. But are we going to pretend? I'm talking absolute here. Are we going to say that is 100% no chance whatsoever that Texas Tech can win a national championship in the next 10 years? Of course it's going to be difficult. Of course the chances are low. It's low for basically everybody except for the top 12 football programs out there. We all know what they are. But are we really going to decree that there is a 0% chance because Texas Tech hasn't won a national championship in the last 40 years? Really? Is that all that we're looking at? Really? Because Texas Tech is not in the Big Ten, is not in the SEC, that they can't possibly win a national championship? We've got all these big changes going on. We've got NIL. We've got the transfer portal. We've got changes coming that we don't even know what they're going to be. And we've got big boosters at Texas Tech. The Red Raiders recently locked down the number 1 portal class. What if they do that for the next couple more years in a row? What if the Pittsburgh Panthers, I'm just throwing another program out there, what if they hire some genius out there, man or woman, some great general manager, somebody who has their finger on the pulse in determining the value of all these free agents out there, all these people in the portal. They use their money wisely. And the Pittsburgh Panthers get on a big victory. What if BYU, what they're doing to the basketball program, what if they put all this money into the football program? These big boosters. What if Dillingham is the real deal Holyfield at Arizona State? What if he follows up Sam Levitt, the great quarterback? Great quarterback. What if he follows up with that with another tremendous quarterback? And then suddenly Arizona State becomes quarterback university. What if Cignetti at Indiana follows up with this incredible football season? Okay, they don't make the playoffs this year, but they make it in 26. They make it in 27. They win a playoff game. They've got all this momentum. How can anybody possibly say all these teams over here, 0% chance that they're going to win the national championship because of the results of the last 40 years? I don't get it. I honestly, I can't even comprehend that type of thinking. That is so feet of cement. You've got feet of clay. You've got feet of clay. And again, I've used this example. I use this example. I'm old enough to remember the birth of the Big East basketball. Big East basketball. It wasn't anything. And then it became something big, huge. St. John's, Seton Hall, Villanova, Georgetown, Patrick Ewing. It was must-watch basketball in those small Catholic gyms. Suddenly the Big East got a new TV package, and they became big time out of nowhere. To sit here and profess that we've got everything figured out for the next 40 years and it's going to look exactly like the previous 40 years. Now, I would agree. And so would everybody else. Look, it doesn't take a genius, even a moron like me. I'm not the brightest bulb in the refrigerator. I just know wherever every refrigerator is and every place that I walk into. But even a moron like me can understand the largest programs have the biggest advantages. The largest programs, the programs that have had success in the past, they have advantages. Some of those advantages are well earned, and they're not going to give those up. The Ohio State Buckeyes are always going to have a better chance of winning a national championship than Indiana. Georgia is always going to have a better chance of winning the national championship than Vanderbilt. Alabama is always going to have a better chance of winning the national championship over Vanderbilt. Just beat Alabama last year, by the way. But the problem I have, we can all pick out the programs that are always going to be the favorites to win. But 0% chance. That was the phrase. That is the phrase that is being used, kicked around by big podcasters. 0% chance. No Cinderellas. Those days are over. I'm not buying that at all. I am not. I have, and not a one of these podcasters, might I add, not a one of them knows what the hell college football is going to look like 5 years from now. Not one of them. And that includes myself, obviously. But yet they can decree that most of these programs have a 0% chance. I just wanted to get that off my chest. It sticks in my craw, man. To live your life like that, to not let open the possibility of a Cinderella. Just look at year one of the expanded playoffs. So many things happen that nobody predicted it would happen in year one. What's going to happen in year two? What's going to happen in year three? What's going to happen in year four? I don't know. But I'm here for the ride, and I want to thank you all for joining us here on Tuesday, February 18th. I do appreciate it. Let me get to the super chats. Then we're going to get to Heather Dinich, and then we're going to talk about the late Big Ten push. 16 teams, but 15th team must be a Big 12 or ACC. Martin Borg, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Thank you for your generosity. Ricky Tungate, thank you, my friend, Mr. Hoosier. Thank you for your super chat. I do much appreciate it. Monopoly, Minnesota's always going to have a better chance of winning the championship than Ohio State. 1933 Telegraph Caster. Thank you, Moen. I appreciate the super chat very much. Minnesota, the national champions in 34, 35, and 1936. Things do change, however. And unfortunately, it changed for my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think the Buckeyes should just worry about October 4th. That's all I'm saying. I ain't saying, but I'm saying. Thank you, Monopoly, for your super chat. Thank you guys so very much. Okay. Let's get on to Heather Dinich. This is the primer. The primer. The meeting tomorrow in New Orleans. And after I get through this article, we're gonna talk about what we've been told here a couple hours ago at Peek Around the Corner, the late push by the Big Ten, and then I'm gonna make a prediction on what is the messaging going to be coming out of tomorrow in New Orleans. Heather Dinich. Now, we only go through parts of this article. CFP Insider. What sources are saying about the playoff change? Heather Dinich, ESPN. For the second time in 4 months, conference leaders from the SEC and the Big Ten will meet in person to discuss common ground during the critical decision-making period in college athletics. Wednesday meeting in New Orleans tomorrow will include discussions about the House versus NCAA settlement and future NCAA governance, but it will also include important conversations about the college football playoff and what the two most powerful conferences want it to look like moving forward. In less than a week, the CFP's management committee will meet in Dallas to begin a thorough review of the inaugural 12-team field. Athletic directors in the Big Ten and the SEC will first have a chance, though, to express their preferences to their respective commissioners before the Big Ten's Tony Petitti and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey meet with their FBS peers. I would imagine that coming out of that Big Ten SEC meeting, that they will come to the table with a proposed governance, proposed format, all of that. One CFP source said. I think that's everybody's expectations, but I don't expect anything radical that hasn't already been discussed. While there is no guarantee that any firm decisions will be made, ESPN spoke to multiple sources that included athletic directors, commissioners, and CFP sources about what they might learn this week, starting tomorrow. Coming out of that meeting in New Orleans, starting tomorrow, the tougher topics to tackle surround the next iteration of the playoff, which starts in 26. Sources in the SEC and the Big Ten have favored a certain number of automatic playoff spots for each league. But even within each league, there remain varying opinions. Sources in the Big Ten seem more aligned in their desire for automatic qualifiers. This is exactly what we reported on September 9th of 2024. A popular model floated publicly includes 4 guaranteed teams, each from the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 teams each from the Big 12 and the ACC, 1 spot for the highest ranked group of 5 champion, and 1 at-large spot, which could go to Notre Dame if the Irish were ranked high enough for inclusion. While guarantees have been debated publicly, the commissioners haven't yet brought that idea to the table in person. And it's hardly the only option. First, they have to decide how many teams will be in the playoff in 26. And multiple sources have indicated for about a year that it is still trending towards 14, at least for now. And while I am not going to dispute that part, I will describe it in this way. Going to 16, there is more oxygen in the room, more now than ever. More now than ever. So the chalk, 14. But 16 is knocking on the door, and it's Tony Petitti that is knocking on the door. And I'm going to follow up with this article. We're going to go into it. Oh, it's going to go to 14. One Big Ten source said. I would bank on that. This is the part of the Heather Dinich article that I said previously earlier in this monologue. I think maybe I got a feeling that if that Big Ten source was talking now, they would say something to the effect of, oh, it's definitely going to go to at least to 14. It's at least going to go to 14. I think that's how he or she would phrase it. Because again, we at Peek Around the Corner, we're able to report to you tonight that the oxygen for 16, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing. If it does, if it goes to 14, that would mean 2 teams earn first round buys instead of the current 4. If the Big Ten and the SEC agree to seeding model that mirrors the selection committee's final rankings more than it did this season, those 2 first round buys could be open to the 2 highest ranked teams, regardless of what conference they're from. So, if it's Texas and LSU, if they're the top 2 ranked teams, after the conference championship games are played, then it would be Texas and LSU will have the 2 first round buys. How would you like that? What's the latest in talks of a scheduling partnership? One topic in its infancy is trying to pit more Big Ten and SEC teams against each other in non-CFP bowl games. But that's part of a broader conversation. That's about the third plane that could land if the first couple of planes do land successfully. But that's part of the broader conversations about how to create more compelling matchups in the best locations and make the postseason a better experience for fans, players, and the bowls. Honestly, what made it a little bit exciting this year was like Michigan beat Alabama, one source said. It actually made those bowls kind of like, okay, who's better? When the SEC and the Big Ten met in October last year, the two leagues considered whether there is a way for their respective conference offices to be more intentional about their scheduling. Until the SEC decides whether it's going to continue to play 8 conference games or move to 9, though, it's a moot point. Again, the first plane is how many teams in the playoffs, how many automatic qualifiers. The second plane that needs to land is the SEC going to 9 conference games. Then the third plane is that the second plane lands, and the third plane is all about the scheduling between the two conferences. And that can be successful. But the first 2 planes have to land in a certain way for the rest to follow. The SEC is unlikely to make that decision before it knows how many teams are going to be in the playoff and how to qualify for it. We just got done saying that. What do the other leagues think of the SEC and Big Ten partnership? 1 year ago in February 2024, the SEC and the Big Ten announced the formation of a joint advisory group of university presidents, chancellors, and athletic directors to address the significant challenges facing college athletics. It was a significant move that further illustrated the growing working relationships between Sankey and Petiti and between the 2 largest and wealthiest conferences. Since then, there's a sense of a growing acceptance of the separation of those 2 leagues from the others and less pushback surrounding the idea of automatic qualifiers. As access trumps everything. Access trumps everything. Some of it is simply because the other leagues realize that they don't have much, if any, leverage. While there is also a general concession that this is the new reality, the Big Ten and the SEC are leading the way. Where the influence and power lies in our industry right now is blatantly clear. One FBS commissioner said, they're talking. Everybody knows they're talking. I'm not bothered by it. And they're doing it at a time when college athletics is in dire need of leadership, regardless of where it comes from. Coming up with good ideas from wherever they come from, I think, is really important for the enterprise, one ACC source said. While not everyone is thrilled with the separation, the Power 4 leagues are still tied together because of legislative strategy, governance, and the NCAA settlement has kept them intertwined and communicating regularly. That bond has lessened the fear of many administrators in other leagues that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to break away from the NCAA, at least for now. As was the case in Nashville, Tennessee in October, when the Big Ten and the SEC last met, attorneys for both leagues will be present, and they want to be very careful to avoid anything that could be construed as collusion. And finally, in this article, you've got to accept the fact that they're going to do some things on their own, one commissioner said. That we all look a little different. We all behave a little different. We act a little different. Of course, there's always some skepticism about what happens behind closed doors. Cloak and dagger, cloak and dagger, cloak and dagger. It is so unfortunate that we believe we have to continue to look out for our self-interest, one Big 12 source said. Who is looking out for the greater good for college athletics and college football in particular? If the discussions between the Big Ten and the SEC can bring ideas to the table that are going to look out for the greater good, then that's great. They should be discussed and brought forward. But is that what's really happening? Heather Dinich, just part of the article that came out this morning, a great article, priming us all up for the New Orleans meeting between the SEC and the Big Ten. Now let me go on and let me expand. Hold on one second here. Let me expand on what we were told a couple hours ago here at Peek Around the Corner. We are going to give you an official peek around the corner on a late Big Ten push. Hold on one second. Before I get into that, one of the missing items, and I cannot figure it out why this is not being discussed out in the open. But if you notice, none of these articles really get to the motivation of the Big Ten. They talk about how the Big Ten wants 4 automatic berths. And then these articles usually go on to say, well, historically, looking backwards, even without the automatic qualifiers, the Big Ten would average about 4, right? 4 teams qualifying in a 14-team playoffs. There would be about an average of 4 Big Ten teams. And then that seems to be where the reporting stops. We have been letting you all know that the motivation since all the way back to last September has been the Big Ten media partners. They want certainty. They want certainty. They want there to be games of importance in the Big Ten conference race. Maybe just possibly getting that 6th spot in the standings would afford a team to go into a play-in game with the 3rd seeded team with an opportunity to get into the playoffs. And if a 6th place team in the Big Ten conference race, if that spot gets you to that opportunity, then the race for that 6th spot is going to be with teams 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way to the last couple weeks of the season. You're creating certainty in your conference schedule. You are creating value within your conference schedule. Same thing with ESPN and the SEC. By the way, on a smaller scale, that certainty for the ACC and the Big 12, it's more attractive now than it was before last year, because at some points last year it was like, the Big 12, are we going to get any teams in the playoffs? ACC, what's going to happen with us? Are there going to be 2 G5 schools sniping in front of us? So now suddenly having a certainty of 2 teams in each conference making the playoffs. So these articles never really get to the motivation. And the motivation behind the Big Ten's push is their media partners. Now, what we were told a couple hours ago, keeping all that in mind, the Big Ten has put a lot of chips into the table when it comes to trying to get the 4 automatic berths. This has been their number one priority. It hasn't been the SEC's. It's been the Big Ten's number one priority. And the SEC, they're still, what we were told, they're still playing a little bit of footsie under the table with other conferences. They're not quite on board. They're kind of on board, but not quite on board. And the Big Ten needs the SEC to be together to get the 4 automatic berths. So the SEC is using their leverage on the Big Ten. The SEC schools do want a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. But then in return, the Big Ten says, you want it, you got it, but you got to go to 9 conference games. And then everything else has to be bowed up in a nice bow tie when it comes to the automatic qualifiers to protect themselves. So these losses that are going to pile up, more losses, especially for the SEC teams, going from 8 conference games and 9 conference games, and then one of their 3 non-conference games being a game against a Big Ten opponent, your losses are you're gonna have more losses than ever. Right? To protect yourselves against those losses, you're going to want those automatic qualifier spots. Tonight, we were told that the Big Ten, believing most definitely that the playoffs are going to go to 14 teams, are willing to support the playoffs to go to 16 teams. To skip 14. To do the work, and it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work to get a 16-team playoffs going in 2026. It's going to take a lot of work with their media partner, ESPN, the scheduling. It's going to take a lot of work. That first round schedule. But the Big Ten is willing to provide the oxygen, to grease the skids, then make sure they get 4 automatic qualifiers. They're open for having the playoffs skip 14, go directly to 16 teams. Now, I can't sit here and say that 16 is the chalk, because it's not, as far as we know. But I'm going to lay down a prediction right here, right now, tonight. I think they're going to come out. This is my prediction. I think they're going to come out of there tomorrow with a 14-team proposal and a 16-team proposal. I think the SEC and the Big Ten are going to come out of there saying these are the guardrails. This is what the 14 team is going to look like. This is what the 16 team is going to look like. And there are unanswered questions on the 16 team format. Because they already know they're not going to get extra revenue for the going from 12 to 14. They don't know what's going to happen going from 12 to 16 with ESPN. There's a whole lot of work to be done. But I believe coming out of tomorrow in New Orleans, you're going to see 2 concrete proposals, options. One wrapped around a 14-team playoff format and the other wrapped around a 16-team format. I say this because of what we were told a couple hours ago. Like, if it gets people on board, if it gets everybody on, if going to 16 teams helps to land that first plane that the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to land together, then the Big Ten is willing to do it. Because the Big Ten wants that scheduling agreement. So does some of those SEC teams. They want it. Don't make any mistake. Greg Sankey wants Big Ten teams to travel down to SEC country. ESPN wants those Big Ten teams to be playing on the road in the South on ESPN, on ABC, to have those Big Ten fan bases watching those games because the national advertisers of ESPN wants it to happen. Let's not make a mistake here. The SEC has a lot of incentives to land that first plane. The college football playoff format. How many teams? How many qualifiers? And the Big Ten is willing to acquiesce, go from 14, which they want, to 16 to make sure that first plane lands. The Big Ten doesn't want 3 automatic qualifiers. They don't want 2 automatic qualifiers. They want 4. And we have told you that since September. To satisfy the needs, the wants, the aspirations of all their media partners. And the SEC knows that. So they're playing a leverage game with the Big Ten. They're meeting in New Orleans tomorrow. There is one more thing I want to say. We've also gotten a whole lot of information on this. The SEC, how do I say this? So we've talked about what does the Big Ten want? What is their number one priority? Four auto berths. What does the SEC want? What do they want? What does the most powerful, valuable conference in the country, what does the SEC want? They want to have more games with the Big Ten, okay. But what do they want out of all these negotiations besides that? They've got ways, the SEC have got ways to make more money. Scheduling agreement. What does the SEC want that they don't already have? They want the following. They want security. What they want is they want to make sure, the SEC wants to make sure that the Big Ten is supporting them when it comes to governance, i.e. enforcement. The SEC, some of you are going to laugh when I say this. Some of you are going to be like, Greg's cheese have completely slipped off this cracker. But I'm telling you guys, this is one big part of the story that's going to come out of all this. The SEC wants to make sure that House versus NCAA settlement, that clearinghouse is legit, is strict, it will enforce I know this kind of sounds kind of strange, right? It does. But it's the SEC now that wants to make sure that the NIL, and I'm not even going to get into the legalities of this because it might very well get shot down and everything. But according to the House versus NCAA settlement, your player, your let's say your backup quarterback is going to make $200,000 $200,000 within the revenue share, right? Out of the $20.5 million. But then he's going to make an extra $75,000. I'm just throwing a number out there for third-party collective. And then that deal, anything above, what is it, $600 or something, has to get passed through a clearinghouse. The SEC actually wants that clearinghouse to be legit. To be like, there's no way that the value of that name, image, and likeness, that player is above so-and-so. We're not going to let this through. Now, again, the legalities of it, putting a cap on somebody's NIL and all that, that's not part of my discussion right now. I get all that. But the SEC wants there to be a hard check when it comes to, they do not want a weak clearinghouse. They want a strong enforcement arm. They want to make sure that there is no programs out there outside of the SEC, outside of the SEC and the Big Ten, that can break the rules, that can shovel a bunch of money at players in the SEC, for example. They don't want, the SEC doesn't want a couple mega boosters out of Lubbock, out of Provo, out of Salt Lake City, out of Manhattan, out of East Lansing. They don't want a couple of big mega boosters completely destroying the environment that they're trying to build, which is security for the SEC, making sure that they remain the top dog. They want a strict clearinghouse. And that is what they're asking the Big Ten to support them on, to make sure that gets built in to the system. I know that comes as a little bit of a, woo, what are you talking about, Greg? You would think the SEC would want to loosen that up. No, they don't. It's the opposite. They don't want an arms race. They've already won the arms race when it comes to athletic department revenue, being able to easily fulfill the revenue share, and they've got healthy collectives, but they don't want an arms race. I mean, if it's a conference versus a conference arms race, the SEC is fine, but they don't want loose cannons out there. They don't want somebody that can consistently go over the top of the SEC programs. The SEC wants a tight clearinghouse, strict enforcement of the House versus NCAA rules. And to get that, they're going to need the Big Ten's help. So when we're talking about New Orleans, I almost said Nashville. When we're talking about New Orleans tomorrow, we're talking about all the subjects that are going to be talked about, reports on everything. That clearinghouse portion, the House versus NCAA portion, is a major part of those talks between the Big Ten and the SEC. Okay, let me go into the super chats here, and then we're going to get to your phone calls. Larry Andrick and Jimmy Austin Thank you guys so very much. You both gifted a membership. Holy smokes. Larry Andrick, Mr. Mountaineer. Let me. Alan Athos. I apologize if I'm getting that name incorrect. You've been gifted a membership, Alan. Please say thank you to Larry when you get an opportunity. Sean Ski was also given a membership by Jimmy Austin, Mr. Duck. I appreciated Jimmy and Larry. You all are hereby knighted. Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger. Alan and Shonsky, when you get an opportunity, please go to our YouTube channel, go to the library and check out the early peak Cloak and Dagger membership only episodes. We dropped one, what was it, yesterday or the day before, number 54. Go check it out. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Larry. I do appreciate your incredible generosity. Expedition Greg gifted a membership to Michael Batts. Michael, when you get an opportunity, please say thank you to Mr. Expedition Greg, Mr. Buckeye, for his generosity. Michael Batts, Expedition Greg, you are hereby knighted. Cloak and Dagger. Thank you guys so very much. Okay, let's get to your phone calls. Phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Now, let me make this perfectly clear, because there are some people out there going, and they want to
Call from
BJ.
BJ, can you hold on one moment, please?
Oh, yes, sir.
I appreciate it. I just want to make this perfectly clear, because I know there's people out there that are already typing up their posts on X and saying, Greg said this, Greg said that, and they're going to get it all wrong. We're not saying that this playoffs is going to 16. We're not saying that. But we are saying is that the Big Ten is not going to be the conference that holds it back from going to 16. They are actually providing the oxygen, the momentum, the inertia of this thing going to 16. Sooner rather than later, just to make sure that first SEC Big Ten plane lands on the landing strip so the others can follow. They're willing, they're open to concede, to acquiesce, to go to directly to 16-team playoff. And I believe that is going to be part of a proposal coming out of tomorrow. There's going to be a 14-team one and a 16-team one. That is my prediction. I'm holding to it. If I'm wrong, you guys know I will take the L easily tomorrow. But I think there's more oxygen towards a 16-team playoff than a lot of people are going to report on it, because I think this is a very late push by the Big Ten. BJ, thanks for calling. The floor is yours.
What's up, Greg? As always, thanks for allowing me to speak on your platform. Great topic tonight. So many things to talk about, but I'll try to keep it as poignant as I can. As it pertains to the Power Two, I think even Stevie Wonder could see this happening, right? I think that them forming an alliance, or whatever they want to call it, last year, right, resulted in them having more financial power, more legislative power with regards to decision makings and moving the governance of the sport. And so with that, they seem to move in conjunction, they being the best two conferences in college football, the Big Ten and the SEC, appear to be moving in lockstep or trying to move in the right direction together, which, there hasn't been any talk about the ACC and the Big 12 doing the same thing. And I think it's a detriment to them, because you got two big power horses moving together, and you're moving solo. You're going to lose that fight all day, every day. And to be honest with you, Greg, I think I mentioned this to you last year. I truly think by 2031, the college football is going to get smaller in terms of the top league, the top level of football. And it's not because I'm not anti, competition, but I'm one of those people who I see it's a business move. I think a lot of people want to focus on sport. This is a business. It is a business. It is a business. It is a business. And when businesses move and they consolidate, things happen. And when I look at the Big Ten and the SEC doing their things, it is not because they're afraid of competition. I think you mentioned it towards the last part of your monologue. They want security. And guess who's behind them? The two biggest sports media platforms that we have, Fox and ESPN. And I don't think they're moving solo. I think they're getting guidance from those two media conglomerates. And unfortunately, the ACC, that's not North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, Clemson, and pretty much the entire Big 12, it's not going to like the result of it. And hopefully we can still have football outside of the Power 2, but I think it's going to go that way, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the 2031 time frame is going to be probably the most important date in college football history, because I think we're going to go down to two major conferences, and I don't really think I don't think ESPN nor Fox is going to offer the Big 12 and the ACC a workable number, similar to what they did to the Pac-12, because I think they're going to put their money into this top echelon of football, and I think that's where we're going to land. But I could be wrong. That's just my opinions and my thoughts. And as always, Greg, I appreciate you giving me the time to speak on your platform, and God bless.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the call, BJ. Great call, my man. I think a lot of people agree with BJ. In fact, I think the chances are growing, not lessening, growing of a possible breakaway in 2030, 2031. I said it 1,000 times on this channel. I believe.
Call from
Rick.
Rick, can you hold on for just one moment, please?
We sure can.
I appreciate it. And I've said this 1,000 times. I believe the breakaway for 26 was impossible. It wasn't going to happen. I think the threats worked. I don't think they should have worked all that well, but they did. But I don't think there was much of it. There's too much intertwining going on with all the House settlement, everything else that's going on. The 2026 scenario was never really real. But the 2029, 2030, 31 is real. What I get it. I mean, I get the power, the economic power of consolidation. It's why USC called the Big Ten. It's why Texas and Oklahoma called Sankey. It's the straw that is stirring the drink. The power of consolidation. I get all that. And I'm going to report it as such. This is the reason why this stuff is going on. There's a reason why ESPN, Fox, and the SEC and the Big Ten teams are interested in doing the scheduling agreement, because it's going to make them more money, because there's going to be more eyeballs on it. We all understand the economics of it. I will say this, though. I am a college football fan. I am a lunatic. I'm very passionate about this game. I'm very passionate about the history, the pageantry. I'm a sucker for it all. So while I understand the economic forces of it, I understand the motivations of all of it. I do. I report on it. I give you guys the peek around the corner on it. It's why Colorado had their meeting in Chicago on May 7th with Brett Yormark and yada, yada, yada. But as a football fan, a lot of this I do not like. I don't like it. I don't like it. And maybe because I'm 56 years old and I'm not 36 years old. Maybe because I grew up I don't like all this predetermination of the end result. I don't like it. Dennis Dodd just came out with an article about an hour ago, and he basically expressed what I feel. It's like it's too much. We already have a lot of predetermination stuff that is going on in college football. We know the programs that have the great advantages over everybody else. We already have that all built in. We already have the moats built around the SEC and the Big Ten. But now we're putting up walls. And it doesn't hit me the same way. And I will say this one last thing, and Rick, I do apologize. Thank you for your patience. I want to say this. We got to be careful, though, because the economics, the power of consolidation only really goes so far. The NCAA basketball tournament has been a massive success. Not because it's been consolidated. It was because it was democratized. Because it gave access to all these little programs across the country. More eyeballs are on the NCAA tournament because people are looking for David versus Goliath. They're looking for Cinderella. And by God, once in a while we get it. Football is a different sport. I get it. Football is a different sport. But there's only so many football players on the football field. There's only so many roster spots on the football field. We have more than enough student-athlete football players coming out of high school that can play at a high level. They can't all play for the Buckeyes. They can't all play for the Bulldogs. They can't all play for the Longhorns. And sometimes the upset does happen. And it's going to continue to happen. It is. Because there's only so many spots. The football players, they go all over the country. Again, look what Arizona State almost pulled off last year. Look what Boise State. We're going to have stories this year. Remarkable stories. So we get into this thing where we're going to put up walls between the SEC and the Big Ten and everybody else. And, oh boy, this is going to be fantastic. And really, it is? I think there's less stories in that world. I think there's less of everything in that breakaway world. I don't think there's more. I think there's less. I don't think the sport grows. I think opportunity shrinkens. I do not want these G5 schools to lose their opportunities. I don't want these MAC schools not to play the Big Ten anymore. Because that money pays for opportunities of the student athletes. The baseball players that play at Western Michigan. The softball players that play at Eastern Michigan. I want more and more and more opportunities. And consolidations, the power of economic consolidations, there's a diminishing return. Eventually, there's a diminishing return on that. I think every college football fan that watches this National College Football YouTube channel completely understands that there are football programs out there that are always going to have the great advantages over everybody else. And that is what we have. And that is fine. Even within the same conferences. But to start building institutional walls between those universities and everybody else, where it's institutionalized, man, that's where I get off the bus. That's where I get off the consolidation economic bus. Rick, I appreciate your patience. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the college football romantic has caught the little general's eye a few decades ago, and your sincerity and your passion is commendable and shared by many.
Thank you, sir.
I was intrigued by the SEC's position on having to deal with the House v. NCAA.
Yeah.
And more specifically, the clearinghouse.
Yes, sir.
And their concern over it.
Yes, sir.
Which to me is, it's a potential house of cards.
Yes, sir.
And they know it, and they foresee it coming, and they want the Big Ten support probably in the courtroom when they bond together to try and protect themselves from the situation that you described of big donors going around the corner and behind the back and over the top, or however they get to their clients to make it happen. And that's good foresight. That's good to see ahead of time. But what they really are trying to do is get control over something they have no control over. But they'll have more control if they have an alliance with the Big Ten in the courtroom.
Yeah, I don't know how much more, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I think eventually they won't have control of it. But yeah, no, I agree. It's sort of something that hasn't been really out there in the public discussed, but it's been told to us that this is what the SEC is looking to talk about with the Big Ten, and Big Ten knows this obviously, and they're trading back and they're trading favors back and forth, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I think this clearinghouse thing, which I really don't talk about it. A lot of people don't talk about it, but I think this is going to be part of the discussion coming out of tomorrow's reporting, I believe.
Well, and again, it's never over until it's over, and the judge puts her gavel down. But I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. And I think I heard the guy from Miami who called the last time.
Yeah.
I think I heard him say that I couldn't agree more. This doesn't apply to future players. They think it does.
Unless they opt in. Unless they opt in, I think it does. Like players don't. Players haven't. They either opt in or opt out. And if they decide to opt in, then they go in. Then they go into this supposedly House versus NCAA settlement thing. But I read a couple weeks ago, there's like 243 athletes that have opted out. Yeah, but if you opt in, supposedly when you sign one of these contracts, you're opting into it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I heard something.
No,
like
I think no. That sounds right. I can buy that.
Yeah.
I just can't understand how, in good faith, a attorney for the player could allow them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the big names who make the big money, they're not going to do it because the world is their oyster. But even the intermediate ones, might be losing, I'll just call an intermediate a 3-star, a significant amount of future earnings by signing up for that.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're selling away your potential.
Yes, you are.
If I come in as a 3-star and I continue as a 3-star and I go out as a 3-star, well, then nothing was hurt. It was okay to sign away.
Yeah.
But God, if I come in as a 2-star and sign a skimpy deal and leave as a 4-star, man, there's a lot of money left behind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get some other callers.
You got it. Appreciate it, my man. Thanks for your patience, Rick. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Rick. I sometimes get on a little bit of a, I don't know, not a rant, but just like a little bit of a, maybe it's a rant. And I kind of lose myself. So I do apologize to Rick. Thank you for your patience, Rick. And thank you for all the other callers who have to listen to me babble along before you get to speak your speak. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the phone call. Heartbreak 25. People overlook the conference tourneys will likely automatic qualifiers, more lower ranked teams than the playoffs. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Again, if we get into, okay, well, we're going to do we're speculating here. We're not reporting. This is speculation. But if we get into this 4 automatic berths and the Big Ten, again, speculation, I do not know how the Big Ten's going to run this. But if the Big Ten has a Big Ten championship game, 1 versus 2, and the Big Ten says both those teams are going to be automatic qualifiers into the playoffs, right? The winner is the Big Ten champion, and the loser is the runner-up, and they both qualify. Okay. And then you got 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, and the winner of those 2 playing games are your 3rd and 4th automatic qualifiers. You're going to have situations where a 6th place team is going to make the tournament because of the play-in game, right? You're going to have that happen once in a while. So again, if they do it the way I just laid it out, which I don't know if they are or not. Again, I don't really have any problems with that if the other conferences had the same opportunities, which of course they're not going to have. But anyways, I've been down that road a lot of times. Give us a call here. The phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Thank you, Heartbreak 25, for your super chat. I do appreciate it so very much. I want the sport of college football to grow. I want it to keep growing. I have got no problems with Alabama making more than $100 million than Vanderbilt in their athletic department. They have the fan base, they have the fan interest, they're willing to pay the tickets. I've got no problem with the Michigan Wolverines making $100 million more in their athletic department than Purdue. No problem. I want the largest programs to keep growing, use their brand, their front porch of the universities. Go for it. Go for it. I got no problem with it. No problem with capitalism. No problem at all. But what I am worried about is the athletic departments that need that football revenue to pay the bills for all their other student athletes, for their opportunities to play sports, to get an education. I guess I'm still this old guy who wants to grow opportunities. You know, we have to protect the rights, the name, image, and likeness rights to the top, most valuable players in the sport. I get that. Their name, image, and likeness, they should be able to produce. They should be able to get what they can get in the market, just like a violinist student at the University of Virginia, right? Just like a chess player at Princeton, just like any other student, a student athlete should have the right to earn as much as they possibly can in name, image, and likeness. But I also think that it cannot be, we can't have that while inflicting less opportunities for other student athletes. That's why this can never be, in my opinion, completely a professional endeavor. It's got to be some sort of quasi-professional, I don't want to call it amateurism, but professional / student athlete. I want more opportunities. I do not want less opportunities.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, the floor is yours.
What's up, Greg? I just tuned in, man, so I'm assuming we're talking about the article that just came out?
What article? Dennis Dodd, Heather Dinich, what are we talking?
Heather Dinich. Yeah, that's all I didn't see anything about.
I did go through some Heather Dinich of earlier this morning. I don't know if she's put one out since, but early this morning, I went through some of that article, yes.
I missed you all day long. But yeah. I mean, we've talked about this going back, and let's just say, I'm not surprised they're telling us about 16, but funny thing, Greg, there hasn't been a single CFP meeting, and if they've taken us from 14 sounds reasonable to 14's a slam dunk, and now they're telling 16 is possible. Like, at some point in time, we just have to grin and kind of chuckle, don't we?
I don't know what you mean. I do.
I mean, it's kind of a fait accompli.
What fait accompli going to 16 eventually, or
yes?
Yeah, I think it is. Now, what
I think it has been, but
well, we've heard a couple hours ago. It could be sooner than we could be jumping over 14 here. The Big Ten is willing to wheel and deal on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a negotiation playing out in public, because part of what they're doing is getting the influential people in each party to kind of push and jostle the people that are in the talks.
Yeah.
So but I think that they were always ready to do this because, look, if you're the Big Ten and the SEC, and before this season, everyone thought the bye was going to be a great thing. That was, I don't want to say proven, but strong evidence to say that's not a good thing. One, there's already a couple weeks off. Like, it's not like you're just making those teams take more time off than the other teams. It's a negative. And two, we saw every team that had a home game just got massive momentum from that game.
Yeah.
Massive. So if you're going to go to 14, and now, maybe the Big 12 and the ACC's chance to get that home game momentum, and you're the Big 10 and the SEC, and your teams aren't, I was just like, they're just never going to, that's not going to fly. But it's a negotiation, right? You don't want to just give that away. So they're trying to get something for it. And I've said with you, and I know you kind of came back off of it a little bit and then went back, but I think that the whole 4AQ thing is also another one of those situations they're willing to give on. But they already said before in the past 3 AQs was fine, but they've gone to 4 to try to get something for it. So I don't know what was, it's interesting that they're just telling us now, like, oh, this is going to happen quick. Well, what day is the CFP meeting? Isn't that, like, this month?
There is a meeting in Dallas, February 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think they want to have another meeting after that. And so it's kind of all, they're going to get to that point and figure out what it is. And because they got a lot of work to do after that, brother. They got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So, they got to get ESPN online. Like, if you're ESPN, do you want one or no at-larges? Like, what are you going to talk about? What's the ranking committee do? What are your weekly shows going to carry if there's no, quite frankly, controversy? So,
yeah,
that was the major thing, is like, because you pointed that out, I do believe, and others have, that ESPN was saying, well, we're not quite sure about it. This isn't good for everyone around the country. Well, that's the case, but they probably just don't want to say that this isn't good for our shows. It's not good for our bottom line.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, so where are you at, like, in terms of, like, I've always been like, I'm a 3 AQ guy, and you were 4, and you said, they might be switching. I mean, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing in that regard?
The Big Ten wants 4. They've wanted 4 forever because their media partners want 4.
Yeah.
Now the SEC has never been, again, the SEC, they've got other higher priorities. One is they really want this scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. They really want that. They know they can squeeze out more money from ESPN. ESPN wants it to happen. ESPN wants the scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. So that is a lot of the SEC's priority. And for them to do that, they're going to have to go to 9 conference games because that's what the Big Ten wants. So they're trading back and forth favors, right? Back and forth.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, and I said this earlier, the SEC wants, and I think this is going to come out of the meeting tomorrow, or if not soon after. But the SEC wants the Big Ten support on a strong enforcement arm of the House versus NCAA settlement when it comes to the clearinghouse. So back and forth, and what I was told at about 4:00 Central Time today, that the Big Ten is providing oxygen in the room when it comes to going to 16 teams to help land that first plane, to help land that, okay, the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to land 3 different planes. The first one is, this is what the college football playoff format's going to look like in 2026 and beyond. Probably with 4 automatic qualifiers for both conferences. Thus, providing protections to each conference, certainty to each conference when it comes to losses. Now they can schedule games against each other. Now the SEC can go to 9 games. That first plane is, what does the playoff format look like, and the Big Ten wants 4. The Big Ten is basically willing to do a lot to get that first plane landed, because once that first plane lands, then the next one, that's the SEC going to 9 conference games, that can land because they don't have to worry about losses now, right? And then the next plane it's a scheduling agreement between the Big Ten and the SEC. Now that plane can land. And money is going to follow these planes, right? There's bags of cash on these planes. But that first one has to land. And that's the one with the Big Ten saying, we want 4, we need 4. This is what the media partners have told us they wanted. We got to get this done, Oh, by the way, Big 12 and ACC, we're okay with going to 16 teams. We're okay for more at-large bids. We're okay with all this, but let's get this first plane landed. So I think, Immaculate, my prediction is for tomorrow. Now, I could be dead wrong, okay? And I'll come on here and I'll take the big L if I'm wrong. My prediction is that we're going to come out tomorrow with a couple of proposals. One, from the Big Ten and SEC, like this is what they're going to show everybody in Dallas on the 25th. Coming out tomorrow, I think we're going to see this is a 14-team playoff proposal. This is a 16-team playoff proposal. And that 16-team playoff proposal is going to have some blanks not filled in. Like, of course, revenue, because you don't know what you're going to get from ESPN. The scheduling, the first round scheduling, but you're going to have 8 home games on campus, but it's not all going to be filled in. But there's going to be 2 different options presented. Here we are. These are the guardrails. This is what the SEC and the Big Ten gets out of both of these scenarios. This is what you guys get out of both these scenarios. Let's work on one or the other. And I think the 16-team one is going to get more and more traction. That is my prediction coming out of tomorrow.
Pretty good. It's pretty good. Can I throw one more wild card into the mix?
Yeah.
I don't think that they have the governance situation nailed down. I think it's part of their agreement with the NCAA through the House settlement basis, but they still need the Division I votes to make it happen. Because I don't think they're creating a whole new division. I don't know what that would take to do, but that might actually take an act of Congress. I don't know, like, if the NCAA can do that all on their own. But anyways, if that's the case, and they have to earn votes, what you might end up seeing is that this two-party system here ends up having to make another concession for that. Like, they come to an agreement, like what you're saying, everything you're saying, I think it sounds dead on. And then they get to that point when they present it. And I think those other people that they need to vote, which, you know, G5, G6, to vote with them, because Division I is large.
Yeah.
And inside of that, the P2 is actually pretty small. So they're going to need votes. And I don't know if you can really stuff the full thing down the throats and still get the votes. And so then it comes down to what we think is, you know, most important. And you could definitely be right. I mean, listen to all that. It all made sense. There's all really good logic. I'm still leaning towards at the end of the day, the very end, when they're at the CFP and talking with those other members of the CFP. Because if you want 4 teams, and let's say you go to a 3-3, 2-2, 2-4 for 16, could be mathematicians way better than me that are in there saying these are your odds, Big Ten and SEC, for getting a 4th team via one of those at-larges. And wouldn't you tend to think that percentage is pretty high?
Yep.
Like, I mean, like 85, 90% or higher. Like, very few often it's not going to happen. And quite frankly, I think they might end up, if they get this governance, they might create something new for like 2030 anyways. So if what they're seeing is like, you know, for 4 years, you're likely all 4 years you're going to get 4 teams. Maybe one of them you only get 3, but it doesn't even really affect your payout because you're paid the same percentage every year, regardless if you were to get 1 team in or 4 teams in. So, you know, they make it sound like this really big, important thing, but that's just for visibility, which is important when you're a commissioner going back to your members. I mean, that's important. They want to be seen.
It is that number 4, for whatever reason. Okay.
Indiana.
No, well, it's that number 4 is coming from the media partners. So that is what they want.
Sure, and I get that.
And I think they're willing I think they're probably willing to pay for it, in other words. So they want that certainty. They want, they probably want 3 games on that. I don't know what we're even going to call it now. Championship play-in weekend, whatever. Whatever that is, that number 4 is from the media partners. So,
but that's negotiable too, right? Like they're like, we want this and we're willing to pay for it. Okay, what else can we do for you? Like, number one, the SEC matchups. One of the reasons why the SEC wants that is they probably want to be on more than just ESPN channels. Then they want to have that builds relationships. So if in the future they want to go open market, they want to start to have some relationships built up in numbers, and it helps them in their negotiations with ESPN when the time comes.
Yeah.
So, like if I'm the Big Ten, I'd say, okay, you guys will get to choose who's going to be home teams. Like you can help decide our schedule. Like what SEC teams do you want them to be the home teams for? I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
Because I agree with everything you're saying. Like they would definitely want that. Like absolutely. But that's stuff that's negotiable, right? So it's like there's a value to that. So if you absolutely, as the Big Ten, in order to get governance, which is, I will take this to the grave, that's top priority because of all the things you can do with that. If you got to do something in order to get that, and the networks are sitting there and playing a little bit of hardball with you, you got to find something to offer them. But you're right. Maybe the others don't fight that much and just give them that. And we do get to the 4. But it is kind of interesting how I do enjoy hearing from you, like the bigger picture of it, right? Like it's not a simple situation; it's a complex situation, and it's like, where do you give? Where do you take?
Yeah.
What's important to everybody? So yeah, that's pretty cool. I kind of wish I would have caught your whole talk on that. But
I'll say this, Immaculate. When we came out here on September 9th, 2024, and we made this big live show about the radical push for the Big Ten to go for 4 automatic qualifiers.
I remember. Yeah.
And I said I can go up. I can do this show because I know we've got it right. We've got it. We've got the story, and I also kind of made it apparent on that night and the following night, saying that one of the reasons why we knew this push was happening is because it was being leaked out of those who leak, and that is media partners, right? I've often explained that if the number one leakage when it comes to college football information is media. Is people connected, media partners, stuff, people who used to work there, whatever, blah, 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 blah.
They like to gab. So,
yep. And people have connections, whatever it is.
Yep.
I don't want to go too deep in it, but
I got you.
So when I came out here tonight and I said there's this oxygen that Big Ten is providing into the room when it comes to the possible leapfrog over 14 to get to 16 because the Big Ten Tony Petitti has the pressure and he's put so much work into it and he's got so much invested in it and he's traded so many bones or favors with the SEC throughout this process to get the 4 automatic qualifier spots. And they're willing to possibly jump over 14 to get to 16 to make this happen, to make this first plane land. That information, again, came leaking out of media companies' chatter. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
The same leakage. So this is why we know that this is going on right now. And I honestly, like I read Dennis Dodd's article. They're all using the same verbiage. Heather Dinich, Dennis Dodd, all of them. They're all saying the same thing. They're saying 14 for now, 16. They're all being told like, the 16 talks are, that might be what gets everything done. You know what I'm saying? You can almost tell they all have the same information again, because a lot of this stuff is not embargoed. This stuff is not, but anyway, so that is why I think we're going to get a couple of different, I could be dead wrong. I'm probably going to be dead wrong. But I think my prediction is 2 different sets of, this is what the world can look like. Big 12, ACC, G5. What do you guys think? We're willing to work with you. But hint, hint, wink, wink. The SEC is going to get what they want, and we're going to get what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, the 14 already had an agreement. They already had that worked out. But that was worked out at a time when they didn't know the things that we know now, based upon what the 12 team, everything that happened.
Yeah.
And so I know people are like, oh, the 14's easy, so just go with it. And it's like, we know too much. We know too much for that to be a good solution. It's the solution you could go with if you can't get consensus. It does have that. But in terms of just being a good solution for what we know now, it's not good.
Yeah.
So I've definitely, I think I've been pretty adamant about it in callings with you and what I posed, that the 16 team will happen. I don't like to guarantee things because of what I know, but I think that's a pretty safe one. I would put money on the line on that one.
Yeah.
But in terms of the AQ stuff, man, I hear you, and I've learned the hard way not to bet against you and that kind of stuff. So I don't think I'd bet for my idea of the 3 AQs, because that sounds pretty solid. I just think that when it comes time to going into that CFP committee, the board, and also Division I governance gets brought up, that might be the thing that, like what you're saying, all the talks between the SEC and the Big have gotten us to this point. That might be a wrench in the party. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right, man. I really appreciate it. Always learn a lot from you, so I appreciate that.
Well, we're going to be coming on live tomorrow whenever we get the reports, so hopefully you can join us, sir.
All right, I'll get the coffee pot on.
It won't be in the morning because I got me and the little general, we got appointments, but sometime in the afternoon we're probably going to be coming on live. But appreciate you, man.
I'll try to make it. I might be filming something with a certain someone else on YouTube. We'll see. But I will definitely try to make it.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
All right. Appreciate you, buddy.
You got
Take care.
Great call by Mr. Hawkeye Immaculate. We got a question in the comments. I appreciate the question from Mr. Pan Knowles 1. How does the 16 team benefit the Big Ten media partners? ESPN owns the TV rights. They're not making sense on Tuesdays, willing to deal. Okay, so the 16 team would not directly benefit the Big Ten media partners for what you said. ESPN owns all the playoff content. But what we're trying to say is that the Big Ten is willing, open to provide the opportunity to go to 16 teams because it benefits the Big Ten media partners for the Big Ten to lock in on those 4 automatic berths. So if going to 16-team playoff helps the Big Ten, helps grease the skids to go to 4 automatic berths, that is what the Big Ten media partners want. Why do they want 4 automatic berths? Why do they want that certainty of every year? Because they're the money that they're paying out, the big money that CBS, NBC, Fox, Peacock, what they're paying out yearly to the Big Ten, that conference schedule will rise up in value more games that are important to the playoff race. If you've got 4 automatic berths and you know it every single year, now you're going to have a plethora of games that matter, conference games that matter going down the stretch in late October, early November. You're going to have 10 to 12 Big Ten teams still in the playoff race if they're able to grab the 6th spot or the 5th spot in the standings to go play a play-in game. That is money for those media partners. Not only that, but then you have the play-in games. If you have 4 automatic berths, you can have a conference championship game, 1 versus 2. You can have 3 versus 6. You can have 4 versus 5. You can sell 3 games during that Saturday, championship Saturday. You can have the 3 versus 6 on CBS, Fox, and then NBC, whatever you want to arrange. The championship game being on Fox late at night and the first 2 play-in games early in the day. All that is more revenue. All that is more and more revenue. Plus, if you have 4 automatic berths, if you have that certainty, now the Big Ten has no problem having that scheduling agreement with the SEC. Because again, the losses aren't going to knock those teams out of the playoff race. It's the conference standings that will determine it, right? The 4 automatic berths. So now you can have these big Goliath teams playing against each other every single year, SEC and the Big Ten, and that is going to bring more value. The home games that the Big Ten will have against the SEC behemoth, that is going to provide more value to the Big Ten media companies. So yes, going to 16 doesn't directly help the Big Ten media partners, but if going to 16 helps grease the skids for the Big Ten to get those 4 automatic berths, then yes, it does help the media partners. This is what the Big Ten media partners want. They've wanted this forever. They've wanted the 4. Now, I happen to think that by sometime tomorrow, we're going to get some reporting coming out that the Big Ten and the SEC are ready to propose option A and option B to the Big 12 and the ACC, and they're going to be working with them, and everyone's going to be singing Kumbaya for a while, and everyone's going to have input, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I think the Big Ten is going to secure what they want the most. The SEC is going to secure what they want the most. And then the Big 12 and the ACC are going to help decide exactly what that looks like. But I got a feeling that we're going to be jumping to 16. Maybe not in 26. Maybe not. But soon after that. Or at least if it doesn't happen. If they don't jump to 16 right away, the Big Ten ain't going to be the ones that are stopping it. I think, we know that there is oxygen being provided, more and more oxygen in the room on discussions of going to 16 to skip the 14-team playoff. Just go to 16. Pretty interesting day tomorrow. Pretty interesting day because, again, as Heather Dinich, we went over the article today, the SEC is not quite aligned. They're still having their internal battles on what they should do with the Big Ten. Should they go to 9 conference games? Again, we'll find out a lot tomorrow. Hopefully, the reports will be pouring in this tomorrow afternoon. Please, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you've liked our content tonight. We are going to be coming on live sometime tomorrow afternoon to discuss what happened tomorrow in New Orleans. The Big Ten and the SEC advisory group. We're going to be talking about it all tomorrow. I don't know what time. You got to keep your head on a swivel It will be breaking news when we come on live, and I hope you join us tomorrow. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to especially thank those generous enough to give us a donation to help us keep the lights on. Martin Borg, Ricky Tungate, Moanopoli, Larry Andrick, Jimmy Austin, Expedition Greg, and Heartbreak 25. I want to thank Rick and BJ and Immaculate for the great phone calls. I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Sorry I wasn't able to get to all your comments. A lot of comments came in. And boy, tomorrow is a very important day in college football. I hope you join us. So keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and have your notifications turned on. Because the moment we get some good reporting on what comes out in New Orleans tomorrow, we're going to be coming on live. So again, buckle up, brace for impact. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.